give the people what they want is something that Haolonggood excels at, based on its track record of offerings. If there was ever any doubt, today's star should remove it. Many of you have mentioned that Megaraptor is one of your top wishes in your wishlist, and now Haolonggood has granted it. As you guys know, in general, I have very little interest in theropods, and I know even less for Megaraptorans, an enigmatic group that are still rather poorly known. Because reconstructing all its members relies on borrowing extensively from each other, the end is a composite that, to me, feels very chimera-like, and so very unsatisfying. For what it's worth, here's how a typical Megaraptoran is often reconstructed, being almost a jigsaw of parts. Still, for Megaraptor itself, there are a couple of features of real excitement. First, of course, are those robust arms with those monster claws. And second, a juvenile found by Porphyry et al. Suggested an unusual longirostrine skull, reminiscent of Haolonggood's. And these two features are what we expect to see expressed in the model, and we will. Now, our model is 23 cm or 9 inches long, with a height of 7 cm or 2.8 inches. Megaraptor was estimated by Paul to be 8 meters or 26 feet, so that makes this roughly 1:35. And here we have the Wonder Artistic Models 1:35 humanoid for a comparison. Now this Haolonggood comes once again in two colors. There's the red, which to my eyes this time really has a lot more red overtones than brown. And you'll see that once again, Haolonggood has done a very pleasing paint job. And we'll see more later, but I feel these white streaks could have been handled better, especially on the right. And for the blue, you see again the beautiful mix of colours, with the white streaks here standing out like two sore thumbs. But otherwise, I just love the colour mix. On the right side, the white streaks aren't as jarring as on the red. Now, onto the model, and we'll start with the red. And here you see that unusually shaped head you wouldn't expect to see on a theropod, and this we know based on a partial skull from a juvenile, including this premaxilla and maxilla, that together create that longirostrine form we've seen in Haolonggood. And elsewhere, the detail is as we've come to expect from Haolonggood. If you look at the exquisite textures in the facial area, and these ridges with a different type of scale, it's just really pleasing. And in the mandible, they've opted for something a little rougher, which is one area I would have liked to see fine scales instead, but no big complaints here. Again, you see with my trusty almond the absolute size of it. The eyes are less cartoony than in their earliest offerings to my eye, but unfortunately, the pupils are placed differently on either side. The jaw articulates, and yes, there are lips, which will please many people. And out of the box, these come together held by an elastic band, and from my experience with the Reebok Tusk and Kiss, automatically makes me think,
I got a bad feeling about this.
Surprisingly, it does a very good job, for now at least. Out of all the lip theropods I've got from PNSO, Reebok, and now Haolonggood, this is the best seal. Then look at the green, with the same kind of detail we've pointed out. On the underside, you see a kind of black marking, giving it a dirty look I like. It's seen less on the red. Now the body. In general, it follows the bow plan we've seen. Now looking first at the red, you can see the colors blend very well in a very naturalistic fashion, with a build-up of layers you just don't see in most mass-produced figures at this price. I love how these white streaks are infused into the main body, but also on the tail. It's just done so well. However, on these ties, they're a bit stark. And then on the right side, they're even more pronounced and lack the more subtle treatment we've seen on the left side. Hopefully, it's just a my copy. Now look at the mottles here in the body. I'm especially a fan of how the colors fade going into the ventral surface. Again, the texture is really amazing. Look at how fine the scales are, with osteoderms that look naturally embedded in the skin without calling attention to themselves in a vulgar way. The neural spine area is done very nicely, and interestingly peppered with scutes on either side. And gone are the thick folds of yesterday, replaced by very fine, subtle ones, as befits the small size of the model. And now we go down the leg, and you see more examples of this. Just some detail on the thighs, and these streaks I've already talked about. I especially like how Haolonggood paint their feet. They look naturally dirty from actual use, and the painting of the feet and claws are areas that I think PNSO sometimes falters in. We now go, of course, to those famous large claws at the end of very robust arms. A contrast to what we're used to seeing in theropods, especially the more derived ones. More powerful and heavily muscled, these end in massive claws that were so large the original describers assumed it belonged on the foot. Any apprehension we typically have when receiving an Allosauroid model whether the claws are sufficiently enlarged can be laid rest in this model. There's no question about their size here. And it's not just the size, but the level of curvature that made this claw so unusual. And you see both here. These claws were almost 30 centimeters or 12 inches on the outer curve. I also like how the hand is emphasized by these coarser, almost crocodilian scales. And now the green. I just love this shade of green. And once again, we can see how the colors blend together so beautifully. The mottling is so naturally infused, I can't get enough of it. Again, we see wonderful detail. The osteoderms, I especially like the way the green segues into the green-yellow of the posterior thighs and the general underside. And this is the kind of blend I always wish to see on an ornithopod like Camptosaurus. You can see the scales are sculpted so very nicely down the leg. Claws again. Those arms and the famous claws. And then the tail. Now let's get to some comparisons. First of all, let's compare the two against each other. I think you can see that except for the color, everything's exactly the same, down to the patterning and position of mottles and stripes. I do wish it would vary a little between each color variant. And color-wise, I very much prefer the green, but you can't complain much if you got the red. Now both of them are stable, and the fact that it's running, I think you could put them together as separate animals, as you wouldn't expect much change in posture. Unfortunately, I have nothing from the Portezuelo formation, nor do I have any other Megaraptoran, so let me just compare him to some members from more typical theropod clades. And first we have the Pianeso Allosaurus, the PNSO the Haolonggood, the Spletosaurus, and just for another runner, here's the PNSO Albertosaurus. Then the PNSO Wilson, and Cameron. So that's it for the Haolonggood Megaraptor. Many of you guys have told me time and again it's top of your wish list. Now you have it, and I appreciate having this member of a clade I didn't have before. And for a first, it's certainly up to Haolonggood's standards of sculpt and color. Again, not a group I'm particularly interested in, and certainly low on knowledge on. So let me know what you think. Does this meet or exceed your expectations? What are some of the differences you would have liked to see in this model? I look forward to learning more from you, and I'll see you in the next video.